the academic side of things, you're obviously you teach at Chapman.
Yeah, the last couple semesters I've done like one or two classes a semester at Chapman. Well, it's an hour commute, so I'm only going there one day a week. Um, but then I've guest lectured at about 70 film schools around the world, really. And then yeah, I think you were getting at I've started something I've done on the last couple of films is started to workshop screenplays at film schools. So with 18 and a half, we did a really nice workshop at University of North Texas in Denton, Texas. And we got a lot of really great ideas out of that. And then on my next script, which I can't really say too much about, we just did a workshop at Elon University in North Carolina. And that was where I had done some guest lecturing. And so they knew me there. And that was great. Got a bunch of students to read it, come up with notes and suggestions and thoughts. And got some really great ideas out of that. I talk about this, I think, a little bit in the book, that there's been a tendency, a little bit of overlabification. Everyone gets, oh, I must get into the Sundance lab. I must get into this other lab, and this and that. And it can really slow you down because those applications take a long time. Even if you get in, and great, congratulations, you got into a Sundance lab. They're all good. But how much time did you waste in just applying to those labs? And even if you do get in, you can only really go if you don't have kids to take care of, or or family, or a job. So they're a little bit sort of by their nature elitist in kind of the time commitments they take, even if you do get in. So my theory is kind of self-labbing. Whether it's at a local film school, or I've done some of my early readings on some of my scripts. We did it at a theater company in Omaha, where I was friends with those people, and kind of the same idea, like, well, let's just do it ourselves. Let's just kind of workshop it together, get a bunch of people together and come up, spitball ideas and see if we can make the script better. You're not wasting 9 months just to find out you got rejected from a lab, only to then apply to another lab. So I also find it sort of somewhat morally reprehensible when you've got all these people who have been to some great film schools, UCLA, NYU, USC, who then take those spots at those labs. And I'm like, hang on a second. Why do you need a lab if you just went to film school? Like, labs make a lot of sense. If you haven't been to film school, great, fantastic. But if you've been to film school, you just had 3 years of labbing. You know how to make films. You went to film school. Then it just becomes pedigree, and it becomes, a notch on your belt to get the film made. But meanwhile, some kid in Iowa or Nebraska or Tennessee isn't getting that slot. And so it becomes sort of this self-fulfilling elitist prophecy, not to besmirch people that have gone to them, but, really, you're taking a spot that could have gone to someone else.
Like, obviously, the main purpose is to make the script better. And it's I know you say this a lot in your book. It's like, you want to have an excellent script to make the film work. One person once told me, you can't have a bad script and it gets better in prep. It has to start really good. It'll get whittled in prep, and it'll turn it, your dreams will be destroyed. Yeah, it could get worse in prep because of logistics and locations and cutting scenes and days and things like that. But it's very difficult to make a bad script good through the production process. It has to come from the start and work its way back. And that's also the least expensive way to make a really good movie, is to actually have a very good script and then work from there.
Exactly. And then the other challenge, the reason why I do these things in sort of interesting places, is that if you do a reading in LA or New York, there's a lot of pressure on it. All the actors that you get for those readings want to be in the movie. All the financiers that come to those readings get bored and then won't give you financing, or, just by the nature of it. But if you do it in kind of, a college setting somewhere in the middle of nowhere, if it goes well, great. You get great notes from it. If it goes badly, no one has to know.
And most of the time, the students are just happy to read a script.
Yeah, no, for them, it's great. They get to be a part of a real production or something that is going, that has the potential to go into production, and, they get a credit for it. The school gets a credit for it. And it's a nice real world, thing that they can do. I mean, this kind of whole idea got again inspired a little bit by Robert Altman, who made Secret Honor at University of Michigan. Got a bunch of students together, got Philip Baker Hall in this basically one man play adaptation. I think it had been a play, and it was also a Nixon film. They did it at the University of Michigan with a bunch of students, and I was like, oh, that was a really smart way to make a movie, and great experience for the students, great experience, he got the film made. And I know a lot of filmmakers who are also academics who are doing things like that. It's whether it was Alex Rockwell at NYU for many years was making films with his students, my friend Eugene Martin at University of North Texas, a lot of filmmakers, who have those second careers as academics, will kind of take that approach as well.
And that academic idea of because you hit this on the start at the start, independent filmmaking is not a rich person's. It's a very difficult way to get wealthy or to become financially successful, and so. If you're in it for that, there are much easier ways to make money. But but if you love making independent film, what can you do to sustain yourself? And the academic realm is actually might be a very good way. As I think Ethan Hawke said, if you can't get excited about teaching someone how to act, you shouldn't be an actor, because it's like it's an art form that is probably best prescribed by turning your experiences into curriculum somewhere, which I think you've said that a couple of times too, where it's like something about like turning failure into curriculum, or turning your lessons into turning your failures into lessons.
I don't know if I have said that, but I will now. So,
Or maybe use that now. Well, it feels like by sharing your experiences, you're teaching other people, and it's not a follow my path. This is the way to the golden arches and the Academy Award, but it's here's a path I took. You could probably find your own path within that path that I've taken that might help you solve the problems that you can't solve yourself or that you haven't figured out yet.
and I also emphasize that the path is not always to make an 90-minute indie feature and do exactly what I've done, but I've also been able to be a little bit nimble enough with whatever new technology or new media comes along to take advantage of it if I can. And hey, if it doesn't work as a screenplay, maybe it works as a graphic novel. If it doesn't work as a graphic novel, maybe it's a Broadway musical. And to be a little bit media agnostic and technology agnostic about some of these things, which also is a little bit startling sometimes to film students who are thinking, oh, I'm going to do this, whether it's a feature or episodic or whatever the thing is in their head. And you're like, well, maybe it's that, but then again, maybe it's something completely different.
Yeah, and I mean, like I was producing a couple of vertical series for a short period of time, which at first felt very much like I was like, oh, this isn't what I got into filmmaking for. But then you start to realize, oh no, there's a medium here. It's not the same type of storytelling, but it's the medium of storytelling.
Exactly. It's acting, it's directing, it's storytelling, it's cinematography, it's editing. I hadn't even heard of verticals until some of my Chinese students in the MFA program at Chapman started telling me, about it, and it was like, oh, that's this thing. That's what the thing that Quibi was supposed to be, and then now it's finally catching up in America, and it's like, it's the one growth element in LA filmmaking right now, are these, vertical things or whatever they're called. But they're the ones renting studio space in LA right now.
And that's maybe just as a question about that academic process, when I went to film school, I'm not sure, many years ago, it's like you went to film school to learn to handle the equipment, like to get access to the equipment, to get access to all these things, and to be taught by someone who knew what they were talking about how to use the equipment properly. And then, you learned how to write a screenplay, and then you wrote a screenplay. But all of that now is sort of, obviously, knowledge is available openly and freely. So where does the academic side of film school fit into all of this, if at all, anymore? Because I mean, you teach at schools, and I mean, I do some teaching as well at film schools here locally.
You're right. What is the role of film school when you've got YouTube Film School? And I know some film students think, oh no, but it's about the connections. That's why I have to go to USC or I have to go to this place or that place. And I'm like, really? Is that? I don't know. I went to USC and made very few connections there, so I don't know how true that is. But at least that is a reason. That is there's some rationale to that distinguishes it from YouTube Film School. But I think part of it is what can you learn from older unemployed filmmakers? And the has-beens and the wannabes that teach at film school, that always have taught at film school. Yeah, and that's why I try to not make it about it's about the camera or the editing software, because all that's going to change, and it will change, and the medium is going to change. Is it projected? Is it not projected? You could be making, in 20 years, maybe the same film school students are making, Google contact lens content, or who knows what. But really more talk about uh, on the one hand, what is the art that we're making, and, and how and why do we do that? But also the kind of the philosophy, like, okay, and again, this goes back to me, because especially because most of the classes I'm teaching are actually producing classes. They're not directing classes. For whatever reason, I'm teaching in the producing program at Chapman. And so it's like, oh, okay, if someone gives you a set of rules, what are the ways to get around them? What are the loopholes? How do you approach problem solving? Like, I always give these students, okay, these are the obstructions that are going to happen on your set. You're going to, an actor's going to get kicked in the head by a horse. You're going to lose your equipment. A camera's going to fall on top of another camera. What do you do? What is your approach? How do you then talk to your investors to get more money to get, to fix that problem? And what is that conversation like? And what is that attitude like? Because those things are never going to change, and that's why, like, it's good to have a little bit of a basis in film history to go, okay, in the 1920s, and when they were stealing cameras from the studio to shoot B movies on weekends, what were the lessons we can take from that? In the 1930s, when they were in the height of the Depression and people were bringing live cows to give away to audiences on at theaters in the Midwest, what can we do that's like that now? Also the bad side of Hollywood, okay, the Hollywood blacklist in the 50s, and how that destroyed the industry from within. What can we do preemptively to protect ourselves against that happening in the Trump administration? You go from giving away live cows to preventing the next blacklist in a heartbeat. But those are the things that transcend, like, what is the technology this week? Because as we know, like, camera technology changes every year, editing technology changes every 2 years. Hard drives change. DCPs change. So it's not as important to learn the real mechanics of that. But if you're going to film school to learn cinematography, those lessons in optics and composition and framing those are going to be relevant whether you're shooting horizontally on IMAX or an iPhone. And those lessons are still going to apply. But at the same time, if you can't afford film school, or it doesn't work for you in your life, then don't miss it either.